Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships. Today we're taking a look at the Jinan because it also got a buff this patch. As you can see here, it got a reload buff, it got a kilometer range buff, and the shell arcs are now better. So the ship is much more comfortable to play now and has an increased DPM on its main guns. So the ship is going to be even scarier to deal with. This ship is very, very difficult to push into. These deep water torpedoes, of course, are a massive threat to battleships and cruisers alike. And the smokes plus the decent DPM, which has now been buffed, and the shell arcs have also been buffed, much more comfortable to get that DPM on target, makes this ship a very scary tier 10. And yeah, the torps weren't buffed. That's just what this ship's always been capable of. So very difficult ship to deal with, and honestly the grind should be a little bit better because it's not only the Jinan that got some buffs, it's the entire line that got some reload buffs, got some range buffs, and got some shell velocity buffs. So they should be a little bit easier to grind now. As you guys probably know, I didn't really enjoy the grind all that much, and Jinan was just kind of an okay reward. The torpedoes were amazing, but I found the shell velocity, the shell arcs, to be very uncomfortable, and the DPM a little bit lacking. But now that we have those things somewhat fixed, the ship is really, really, really good. I have had some pretty decent games in it so far. Haven't played it a ton yet, because of course we were looking at those battleship changes all last week. But the few games that I have played in Jinan here have been very, very nice. This poor Yamato finding out exactly how frustrating it is to push into a Jinan with some spotting. Of course, we do need some spotting support, but those torpedoes combined with this smoke and the DPM, it's very, very difficult for a battleship to really do anything here. I think the Jinan was probably a good tier 10 before anyway, but with these buffs, it's just way more comfortable to play. The ship, of course, looks a lot like the Austin that we took a look at the other day, because it's basically the same hull. You still get that 32 mil plating like we talked about there, allowing you to brawl a little bit. So it's very nice to have that option in the mid to late game when a lot of these matches can be won by a cruiser playing a little bit more aggressive. There we go, Yami goes down, and pretty easy farm at that point, honestly. These torpedoes, of course, have 13.5 kilometers of range, and they're deep waters. If you don't really know about them, it's that they have ridiculously good concealment. So they kind of just pop up next to your ship, and they only hit cruisers, battleships, and aircraft carriers. So destroyers are immune to these. They can't be hit by them. So that's why they're kind of allowed to have that detection, I guess. It hurts, man, anytime you're in a cruiser or a battleship, because they do a ton of damage, and there's almost no reaction time. We're not going to hit any torps here, unfortunately, but I do want to leave this clip in just to show you how ridiculous this ship is when it comes to dumping out an insane amount of torpedoes. We've already dumped 20 torps, and now we're dumping 30 torps, and now we'll swap to the other side and dump 40 torpedoes into the water in like 30 seconds. It's pretty insane. So if you're trying to push, don't push into a Jinan. Here I'm just trying to line up some torps on this Montana. I was hoping he might push back in towards the A-cap. I wasn't sure given that it's a Cyclone, but unfortunately I think he actually goes to deal with our Colombo in the south, and I don't get any hits on him. So we're going to move ahead, maybe cap the A-cap here. This ship is not the fastest, but it's quick enough to get around the battlefield and contest cap points and try to be in positions where the enemy team is pushing. Of course, Jinan really doesn't want to push into things. The torpedoes chasing people isn't going to work out that well. And even with the range buff plus the shell velocity buffs, it's not going to do great when people are kiting away from it. So you are, when you're playing this ship and this entire line, you're really looking on the map to see where is the enemy team pushing, and then you want to go in front of that push and try to stop it. That's kind of the idea of this ship. Montana, close range. Fortunately, he's not looking at us quite yet, and we did get some surprise torpedoes on him. He still doesn't see them right now, by the way. Probably right now. They kind of just pop up next to your ship. So if you see people not reacting, or maybe you happen to catch some random torps on people and just dev strike them and get a double strike, or not quite a dev strike, but get a double strike. Why not? It's very difficult for people to dodge these things. It's kind of absurd and difficult to deal with. Next up, we have a Jaeger here. This game did get out of hand, but we're slowly bringing it back. Possibilities to clutch this game out, honestly. We don't know where the Monty is, unfortunately, but hey, we do have the opportunity to kill this Jaeger here. If I could aim or get decent dispersion, not sure which. Probably a combination of both. Maybe this Jaeger has Dazzle. Maybe Dazzle is impacting things here alongside the Cyclone, making our, I don't know, dispersion a little worse, I guess. Is it Cyclone or the Thunderstorms that does that? I might be confusing the two. But Dazzle might have been working there for that Jaeger. Not sure if he had it or not, but we don't manage to pick him up. But our Kansas does. As his last-ditch salvo, I think he goes down to the Litoro here, unfortunately. But we should get some surprise torpedoes on this guy. If he's focused on the Kansas there, he might not be able to turn his guns in time. And if we can get this guy before the Monty, say, shows up in the south side of the B cap, right? We'll be stuck in a crossfire at that point. Maybe we can clutch this one out. 145k already feels pretty good. We do get proxy spotted, so I'm trying to see where his turrets are. Looking at his turrets. Rear turret, not on us. Front turrets are turning, so we got to be quick about this. Torpedoes, send them in. Try an angle, again, 32 mil plate. Got to get it angled, though. And not quite enough, like we talked about yesterday. It's a very precise angle that you have to take, and I wasn't quite able to turn in time for that one. So unfortunately, it does end in a defeat, but it's still a really good game. Double strike is always hilarious. 10 torp hits. The main gun's doing some decent damage. And honestly, Kansas top scorer, that man was putting in work. For a tier 8 to be doing that much in a tier 10 game, that's pretty impressive. But don't think that this ship has difficulty brawling. This ship can push in. Smoke and the smoke fire certainly helps you out, especially when you have spotting. But you can peek around islands. You can use this armor to bounce things, like we just bounced that Schlieffen salvo there. It's possible to brawl in this thing. It's not easy, of course, but it is possible. Unlike the Austin, you don't have that burst fire, so really a lot of the potential dev strike damage where at closer ranges, someone pushes you around an island or something like that, your damage has to come from torpedoes. The main guns are there for consistent DPM, really. You're not going to get that insane burst alpha like you see on the Austin. So we're just trying to light fires on this Schlieffen. Do have a div mate here in a Vermont, so, you know, if Schlieffen goes broadside, he's probably just going to get smashed. So just trying to get a few fires here. And you'll notice that we don't actually have a hydro here, which is a little unfortunate. Schlieffen torpedoes, can't spot them in time, unfortunately. But yeah, our div mate Sepp there definitely smashes the Schlieffen. And now there's an Aegir. So broadside Aegir. Does he take some damage from a Vermont? Let's see. Pretty close range shot. Half only? Only half. That's unfortunate. In the meantime, we do try and smoke him up, and we get 3 fires on the Aegir. Unfortunately, I think he has a damage control. Yeah, a little disappointing for the battleship not to dev strike him there. Just reversing out broadside to a Vermont at that range seems suicidal, and yet he lives, so unfortunate there. But for a Jinan, we can just apply some DPM here and then just wait for the enemy team to come to us a little bit. We want to apply some pressure in this middle gap. And what is this smoke? That's a very suspicious smoke from a Napoli of all things. So we're going to torp for the Aegir, and maybe the Napoli gets greedy for something, but the torps are mainly if the Aegir reverses out again. And we're going to focus Aegir since Napoli is just so difficult to kill. We can at least do some decent damage into Aegir superstructure. Napoli superstructure is small. We're going to shatter a lot. And he gets greedy for torps. So, yeah, pretty easy kill for us there. We'll take it. The deep waters don't give you a lot of time to react. Again, guys, you pretty much have to predict when those torps are coming. And there's really no reacting to them at all. You have to just assume they're coming and then preemptively dodge them. That's the only way to really avoid them. Unless you have Hydro, of course. If you have Hydro, then it's a lot easier if you use that Hydro. Unfortunately, Sepp does go down to, I'm pretty sure this Alsace just sat the entire game waiting for us to come out of this gap. A little awkward there where the entire point was to wait for us, unfortunately. And we did what he wanted, which was walk out and give him free damage. But hey, the game was ending, getting a little bored, so may as well go for it. Probably should have led these a little bit more for the Alsace, but we might clip him here. And we do want to get our torps up for the Monty. Notice us actually live, even though we're kind of in a crossfire here. We happen to hit the angles pretty well for both the Monty salvo and the Alsace salvo. Unfortunately, there's a devastation on the one line that's also looking at us. So I guess we had a good, we distracted them well. Kind of weird to have that many people looking at us, even though there's plenty other ships in the game on other flanks, but hey, we'll pick up a few more torp hits in onto the Monty there. A pretty decent game still. And we were brawling it out a little bit. Close range fights like that. And Jinan can kind of survive. It's a fun ship to play. As for the build here on Jinan, I kind of threw something together to test this thing out, and I think I'm going to change it. But just to show you guys what I was working with in this video, this is what I went with. Kind of spammed some lower tier skills, you know, getting ourselves a little extra fire chance, fill the tubes, making our torps just a little bit better. Consumable specialist here helping us get back to some of those more valuable consumables. You notice I'm missing out on heavy HE and sap. This is just 10% damage from our HE, without any penalty, of course. The 15% only applies to guns that are more than 127 millimeters, much like the Austin we looked at the other day. So I do think I would like that skill, especially if we trade maybe some of these one-pointers. Keeping fill the tubes is nice for the reload on the torpedo tubes, and I don't really want to give up any of our healing or our HP here. We don't have that many smokes. Getting up to 4 smokes is nice to have on a ship like this, since we do get killed pretty quickly in some of those more open water matches. So we do want to be using those if we don't have the option to use islands as much. So not sure what I would go with here first. Consumable specialist honestly could be pretty nice. You know, so if we take these skills here and grab ourselves concealment, 2 points left. Maybe it is demo, honestly. I don't know, something like that. 1 and 2 point skills, it's really take your pick, but getting extra damage out of these guns, especially now that they have better shell arcs. I keep saying the shell velocity, but I'm assuming it's, given the wording of it, it says the main battery shell ballistics have been changed, trajectory will now be flatter. I'm assuming it's something to do with like shell weight and stuff like that, and not that they increased the velocity of them. Something like that, but regardless, easier to use shells means probably want to buff the HE a little bit more usable. The torpedoes are already good enough, honestly. An extra 20%. We were dev striking battleships when we get those torpedo hits anyway, so they're strong enough, I think. I'd rather buff the DPM, the consistent damage, the ones where, you know, torpedoes aren't always going to hit every game. So that's where I'm going with this, but honestly, you can build however you want to. You could build a full torp build, and it's pretty hilarious when people push into a full torp build Jinan. But I do value the consistency of the main guns, and the torps are still already very, very strong regardless. Like I said, deep waters here. 0.8 kilometer detection. Less than a kilometer away is where these things get detected. And they do 18k damage, go 70 knots essentially. Like, very, very, very strong torpedoes. There's that 32 mil plating, just like we talked about with the Austin, right? If you angle it correctly, you can avoid citadels at closer ranges unless the battleship overmatches 32 millimeters, which wasn't the case in a lot of these games. So there you go. That is the Jinan. Taking a look at this thing with the buff. Like I said, the rest of the line got similar buffs, so I do think it'll be a little easier to grind. But for sure, the tier 10 is the best version of this line. So if you're struggling with the grind, at least know that the Jinan is very strong at tier 10. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.